In 1945, Austrian police made a bizarre discovery in Lake Toplitz, a remote Alpine lake near the end of World War II. Wooden crates filled with British pounds, millions and millions of pounds sinking into the dark water. But these weren't stolen bills. They were something far more sinister. They were counterfeit, the most perfect counterfeit currency ever created. So perfect that even the Bank of England couldn't tell them apart from genuine notes. So perfect that by the war's end, experts estimated that 1/3 of all British currency in circulation might be fake. This wasn't the work of common criminals. This was a Nazi operation, a secret plan to destroy the British economy from within, to bankrupt an empire without firing a shot. Codename Operation Bernhard. And the counterfeiters? Jewish prisoners in a concentration camp, forced to create the very weapon that would fund the Nazi war machine and nearly collapse the British financial system. This is the story of history's most audacious counterfeiting scheme. How the Nazis turned currency into a weapon of war, and how a group of prisoners used their skills to survive the Holocaust while unknowingly participating in economic warfare. Economic warfare gets an upgrade. Berlin, 1939. As Hitler's war machine rolls across Europe, Nazi intelligence officers are thinking beyond tanks and bombers. They're thinking about a different kind of weapon: money. The idea is elegant in its cruelty. What if you could destroy an enemy's economy without conquering their territory? What if you could make their currency worthless, trigger hyperinflation, collapse their banking system, and watch their society implode from within? The British Empire runs on pound sterling, one of the world's most trusted currencies, backed by centuries of financial stability. British pounds fund the war effort, pay soldiers, buy supplies, maintain global trade. The pound is British power. But what if the Nazis could flood the market with perfect counterfeits? So many fake bills that nobody trusts real ones anymore. The British economy would spiral into chaos. Trade would collapse. The war effort would grind to a halt. Britain would be forced to sue for peace. It's brilliant. It's diabolical. And in 1939, it's given the green light. Enter Bernhard Kruger. The man chosen to lead this operation is SS. Major Bernhard Kruger, a mid-level officer with no particular expertise in counterfeiting, but fanatical loyalty to the Reich. The operation will bear his name, Operation Bernhard. Kruger's mission is clear but monumentally difficult. Produce millions of perfect British pound notes, so perfect that they're undetectable, even under expert examination. This isn't some crude printing press in a basement. The British pound note is one of the most sophisticated pieces of currency in the world. Unique paper with embedded linen fibers, complex watermarks, serial numbers that follow specific patterns, intricate engraving work, distinct texture and weight, security features designed to thwart counterfeiters. To replicate all of this requires master engravers, expert printers, chemists who can recreate the paper, and forgers who understand every microscopic detail of British currency. Where do you find such specialists during a world war? In concentration camps. In 1942, deep inside Sachsenhausen concentration camp just north of Berlin, the Nazis establish Block 18 and 19, a secret compound within the camp. It's separated from the main prison by barbed wire and armed guards. Nobody knows what happens inside. SS officers begin combing through concentration camps across Nazi-occupied Europe, looking for specific prisoners, engravers, printers, lithographers, bank clerks, artists, anyone with skills useful for counterfeiting. They find them: Jewish prisoners, political prisoners, experts in their fields, now starving and terrified in Nazi death camps. The SS makes them an offer they can't refuse. Work on this secret project and you'll live. Better food, better housing, protection from the gas chambers. Refuse and you die. By late 1942, approximately 140 prisoners are assembled in Block 18. Among them, Adolf Berger, a Slovakian typographer, Salomon Smolyanov, a Russian master engraver, Moritz Nachtstern, a master printer, dozens of others, the best forgers the Nazis could find. They're told nothing about the operation. They're just given orders: replicate British currency perfectly. Their lives depend on it. The impossible challenge. The British pound note isn't just paper with ink. It's a marvel of 18th century security technology, refined over centuries. The prisoners face staggering challenges. Challenge number 1, the paper. British pound notes aren't printed on wood pulp paper like ordinary documents. They're printed on a special blend with embedded linen threads and rag content, giving them a distinctive texture and durability. The paper itself has watermarks, ghostly images visible when held up to light. The Nazi chemists work for months, experimenting with hundreds of paper formulas. They test fiber ratios, pulp mixtures, thread counts. They have to not just match the appearance, but the feel, the weight, the texture, the way the paper ages. Finally, they succeed. They create paper virtually identical to genuine British currency stock. Challenge number 2, the plates. The engraving on a pound note is microscopically precise. Every line, every curlicue, every tiny detail is intentional and nearly impossible to replicate. Salomon Smolyanov, the master engraver, spends months studying genuine British notes under magnification, then hand-engraving copper plates that match them line by line. His work is so precise that even with a microscope, experts can barely distinguish his engravings from the originals. It's art, deadly art. Challenge number 3. The serial numbers. This is where most counterfeiters fail. British pound notes have serial numbers that follow complex, non-obvious patterns. The Bank of England tracks these patterns meticulously. Random numbers won't work. They'll be immediately flagged as fraudulent. The prisoners need to crack the Bank of England's numbering system. They study hundreds of genuine notes, looking for patterns, sequences, algorithms. It takes months, but they figure it out. They can now generate serial numbers that appear authentic. Challenge number 4, the aging. A freshly printed note looks fake simply because it looks new. Real currency circulates, gets folded, gets dirty, gets worn. The prisoners develop techniques to artificially age the bills. They crumple them, rub them with dirt, expose them to chemicals, run them through washing processes. They make new money look old, the first success. In 1943, after months of trial and error, the first batch of counterfeit pound notes is complete. They're sent to Berlin for testing. SS officials take them to banks, to currency exchanges, to expert examiners. Nobody can detect them. They pass every test, even the Bank of England, when eventually presented with samples through back channels, cannot definitively identify them as forgeries. The watermarks are right. The paper is right. The engraving is right. The serial numbers check out. The prisoners have done the impossible. They've created perfect counterfeits. Kruger is ecstatic. Production ramps up dramatically. The factory floor, by 1944, Block 18 and 19 have become a full-scale industrial counterfeiting operation. The workflow is optimized like an assembly line. Chemists produce the paper. Engravers cut and maintain the plates. Printers run the presses day and night. Quality control teams inspect every note. Aging specialists make them look circulated. Packaging teams bundle them for distribution. The prisoners work 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. The conditions are still brutal. They're still in a concentration camp, but compared to the horrors elsewhere in Sachsenhausen, they're living in relative luxury. They have adequate food. They have beds. They're not being gassed or shot, but they know they're living on borrowed time. The moment they're no longer useful, they'll be killed. By mid-1944, the operation is producing millions of pounds per month. The question becomes, what do the Nazis do with all this fake money? Phase 1. Sabotage. The original plan was simple. Drop millions of counterfeit pounds over Britain from bombers, flooding the economy with worthless currency. The Nazis actually attempt this in 1943 German. Planes drop bundles of fake pounds over British cities, hoping people will pick them up and spend them, injecting chaos into the monetary system. But it doesn't work. British civilians are suspicious of money falling from the sky during wartime. Most bills are turned into authorities. The Bank of England quietly removes them from circulation. The sabotage plan fails, but the Nazis discover the counterfeits have a far more useful purpose: funding espionage. Phase 2, the spy economy. Nazi intelligence services need money. Real, spendable money to fund operations across Europe, the Middle East and beyond, paying spies, bribing officials, buying supplies in occupied territories. The counterfeit pounds are perfect for this. They're indistinguishable from real currency, so they can be spent anywhere British pounds are accepted. And if they're detected as forgeries years later, who cares? The Nazis aren't worried about their credit rating. Suddenly, Operation Bernhard becomes the Nazi intelligence black budget. Millions of fake pounds flow through. Spy networks in Britain, paying informants and saboteurs. Operations in neutral countries like Turkey, Switzerland, and Portugal, where British currency is widely accepted. Arms purchases in the black market. Bribes to officials in occupied territories. Funding for pro-Nazi movements across the Middle East and Asia. The counterfeit pounds lubricate the entire Nazi intelligence apparatus. German agents carry briefcases stuffed with perfect fakes, spending them freely, knowing they're functionally identical to genuine British money. The economic impact. By 1945, Estimates suggest that between 10% and 33% of British pound notes in circulation might be Nazi counterfeits. The exact number is unknown because the forgeries are too good to identify reliably. Think about the implications. The Bank of England can't trust its own currency. Every pound note might be fake. How do you stop that? How do you restore trust? The British response is drastic. After the war, the Bank of England will be forced to recall and replace entire series of pound notes, issuing new designs with enhanced security features. It's a massive, expensive operation and an admission that the Nazis successfully compromised the integrity of British currency. The economic warfare worked. Not as intended. It didn't collapse the British economy, but it did force Britain to spend enormous resources, securing its monetary system while fighting a two-front war. The prisoner's dilemma. Meanwhile, back in Sachsenhausen, the prisoners live in a moral nightmare. They know what they're creating. They know their perfect counterfeits are funding Nazi espionage, prolonging the war, perhaps contributing to Allied deaths. Every note they print might buy bullets used against British soldiers, but they also know that if they sabotage the operation, they'll be executed immediately. Some prisoners try subtle sabotage, introducing minor flaws, slowing production, making mistakes. But it's incredibly dangerous. Quality control is rigorous. Mistakes get you shot. Adolf Berger, one of the prisoners, later describes the moral calculus. We were helping the Nazis, yes, but we were also surviving. And survival meant maybe, just maybe, we could bear witness after the war. They're trapped between collaboration and death, the collapse. By early 1945, the war is clearly lost. Soviet forces are closing in from the east, American and British forces from the west. Berlin is in ruins. Operation Bernhard is ordered to pack up. The counterfeiting equipment, the printing plates, the remaining fake currency, all of it must be hidden or destroyed before Allied forces arrive. In April 1945, the prisoners and their SS guards are forced on a death march, moving from camp to camp as the Nazi regime collapses. Many prisoners die on the march, shot, starved, or succumbing to disease. The remaining counterfeit pounds, millions, and millions in fake bills are loaded into crates. Some are burned, some are buried, and huge quantities are dumped into Alpine lakes, primarily Lake Toplitz in Austria, where Allied forces won't easily recover them. The SS doesn't want the Allies to find evidence of Operation Bernhard. They're trying to destroy the proof. Liberation and survival. In May 1945, as Germany surrenders, the surviving prisoners from Operation Bernhard are finally liberated. Of the approximately 140 who worked on the operation, most survive, a remarkable survival rate for concentration camp inmates. They're among the lucky ones. While millions died in the Holocaust, they lived because they had useful skills. But liberation brings new questions. What do they do now? How do they process having spent years creating weapons for the Nazis? Adolf Berger will spend the rest of his life telling the story, writing a memoir titled The Devil's Workshop, which will later be adapted into the 2007 film The Counterfeiters, winning the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. The aftermath. The British discover the scale of Operation Bernhard after the war and are horrified. The Bank of England launches a massive investigation, trying to determine how many fake notes are still in circulation. They can't figure it out. The counterfeits are too good. Between 1945 and 1952, the Bank of England withdraws all pre-1945 pound notes from circulation and replaces them with new designs featuring enhanced security features. It's one of the largest currency replacements in history and a direct response to Nazi counterfeiting. The economic damage is hard to quantify, but estimates suggest the counterfeiting operation cost Britain hundreds of millions of pounds, equivalent to tens of billions. Today, in withdrawn currency, security upgrades, and economic disruption. The Lake Toplitz mystery. For decades after the war, Lake Toplitz becomes a site of fascination and treasure hunting. Divers repeatedly explore the lake, finding crates of counterfeit British pounds, printing plates, German military equipment, but also rumors of Nazi gold, stolen art, secret documents. Multiple divers die attempting to explore the lake's depths. The lake is unusually deep and dark, with layers of logs and debris making diving extremely dangerous. To this day, not all of the Operation Bernhard currency has been recovered. Some crates remain at the bottom of Alpine lakes, containing perfect counterfeits that were never spent. The perfect crime that failed. Operation Bernhard was both a stunning success and a strategic failure. Success. They created the most perfect counterfeits in history. They produced millions of undetectable fake pounds. They compromised the integrity of British currency. Failure. They didn't collapse the British economy. They didn't force Britain out of the war. The strategic objective, economic warfare. Decisive enough to change the war's outcome, failed. But the operation revealed something profound. Currency is only as strong as the trust that backs it. When that trust is compromised, even slightly, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Modern relevance. Today, Operation Bernhard is studied by central banks designing security features for modern currency. Counter-terrorism experts worried about state-sponsored counterfeiting. North Korea's supernotes are a direct descendant. Economists studying economic warfare and currency manipulation. Intelligence agencies understanding how adversaries might weaponize money. The lesson is clear. In modern warfare, you don't just attack armies, you attack economies, currencies, trust itself. The human cost. We can't forget the prisoners forced to create these counterfeits. They survived the Holocaust by becoming tools of the Nazi war machine. A.e. moral complexity that haunted many of them for the rest of their lives. Adolf Berger, interviewed in his 90s, was asked if he felt guilty. His answer, "I did what I had to do to survive." The guilt belongs to those who created the camps, not those who did what they must to live one more day. It's a reminder that history's grand operations, the schemes, the plots, the strategic gambits, always come down to individual human beings, making impossible choices under unimaginable pressure. Operation Bernhard, the Nazi plan to bankrupt Britain with perfect counterfeits. It was audacious, sophisticated, and terrifyingly effective at a technical level. It compromised one of the world's most trusted currencies, funded Nazi espionage across the globe, and forced Britain into one of the largest currency replacements in history. But it didn't win the war. In the end, tanks and soldiers mattered more than fake money. Still, somewhere at the bottom of an Austrian lake, crates of perfect British pound notes remain a submerged monument to one of history's most ambitious financial crimes and a reminder that in war, everything becomes a weapon, even money itself. And if you ever find yourself holding a British pound note from the 1940s, you might be holding a piece of Nazi counterfeiting history.